I'm currently associate professor at Rutgers University here in New Jersey, and I'm in the 4-H Youth Development Department, and my position is statewide expressive arts. So I coordinate arts programs for youth K to 12. And I do a lot of trainings, a lot of curriculum development, grants, program development, and the drama therapy work I do is within this job title. So I'm able to do drama therapy work as part of my job here. And my background, I started out as an English teacher. I have my certification in English speech and theater from New Jersey, permanent certification, and started out as a public school teacher and college professor in the classroom. And then because of my experience with taking the criminology class taught by the Fortune Society, I made a major shift and decided that I would be more involved in arts therapies, arts for social change. And so I got my master's in cultural arts programming with more of a therapeutic focus from Florida State. And my interest again is arts and arts therapies, arts in the community. So I'm a teacher, but not in the classroom per se, as I was, before I got involved in this. I've been in my work in corrections maybe this is another question, but began back in the 70s. And I've been in different facilities, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s. So my perspective comes from all that work over those years. So. I began because, just to give the historical, that the course that I took in Montclair State in senior year was taught by members of the Fortune Society, who were primarily ex-inmates who were talking about prison conditions. And that was a criminology course that was taught by them. I began the work in the jails and prisons because of my dismay and concern about prison conditions. And I felt, what can I do to do something? Because I said, I cannot be passive about this. We cannot be treating people like this in cages. And so how can I use my arts background? And so I began actually to volunteer or to go to jails and start to offer the drama therapy programs in those settings. So I did Tompkins County Jail, the Onondaga County Jail in New York, the Federal Correctional Facility in Florida, Essex County Jail, Northern State Prison, and the Monmouth County Youth Detention Center. So in New York, New Jersey, and Florida, in those different settings. But my premise, the reason I'm saying this is my premise is not to be a part of the system. I'm like clearly wanting to show that I'm not employed by the prisons. I'm not supporting the conditions of prisons. I'm an advocate for alternatives. So that kind of creates the framework of the work that I do, so that I think that makes a difference, because the inmates who have been in my classes, I think, know that I'm not, I'm looking for alternatives for them. And so the drama therapy is one vehicle for expressing themselves, their self-worth, because the system is not promoting their self-worth. So most of my approach is with improvisation, with creative writing. Sometimes literature is a basis of a springboard. For instance, Phenomenal Woman by Maya Angelou, or Mother to Son by Langston Hughes. Sometimes literature will be a springboard for the drama therapy. So I'm using different art forms as a catalyst for the drama therapy work. And I do incorporate various techniques like the empty chair, role reversal, tableaus, depending on the setting, depending on if I'm doing more individual work or group work. But I actually incorporate other techniques from, theater games, creative dramatics, psychodrama. I don't employ psychodrama, but I use some of the techniques like the chorus and empty chair, and intertwine those in working with groups. So, and again, of course, I'm in short term and long term. Some I've worked with groups over a period of time. Some have been short term because I've worked in jails where people are there usually short term. So what I do is very much influenced by how long I'm going to work with the clients. So in terms of the nature of the work, what I can do, how much we can do within the time that we're working. I've not been in one setting long term, and I've not been employed by the prison. I've come in either voluntarily or on a grant, or so it's a different, unique approach, I would say, with that. The unique, it's kind of referring back to the other question a bit, is that I'm coming from a perspective of having been educated on how prison conditions are not humane. So that, I think, couches what I do. So that's important. And that I also look at alternatives. So I'm always looking, could we do prevention programs, community-based programs, diversion programs, probation programs, reentry programs. I'm not approaching the work in corrections from only the incarceration. So I am always looking to see how I can advocate for alternatives. But while I'm working in the jails and prisons, I think that philosophy comes through in terms of the work that I do. I would say my strengths are that I'm very flexible in terms of with each of the students I'm working with, working off of their interests. So creative writing can become playwriting, improvisation techniques, if there's more of an interest in that, going that route, incorporating visual arts, music. I had a woman who was in the jail who was a dancer, and she interpreted Phenomenal Woman by Maya Angelou as a performance piece. So I think that's a strength of mine, that I'm able to capitalize on the individual skills, interests, ideas of each individual, rather than having one flat approach. The challenges or weaknesses would be the fact that because I've worked on a variety of settings and not been in one jail or prison or one setting for long term, I'm very aware of how much I can or cannot do within that framework, because I might see somebody one time and only one time, or only a couple times. So I'm very sensitive to not going deeper. When I know I'm going to have more time with a group, I will. And when I know that there are supports in that facility, social workers or counselors, because when working with someone like myself, who is coming and then going to another facility, I have to be sure that therapeutic staff is able to process what comes out. So I guess the challenge of the work that I've done has been juggling that, juggling how much can I do with the short term individual that I may not see for a long time, for that long a time. So that's always an issue. Hey, what I have to do is to turn around the negative effects of the incarceration. I'll give an example. I was doing a program with youth in the jail in Onondaga County, and there was a pool table there. So the pool table, they transformed into a boat, and the boat they did a scene where they were on the boat, and it was an adventure, and it took them away temporarily from the oppressive environment. So that's one thing where I was aware that, well, this is good. I mean, they're smiling, they're laughing, you know, they're actually working together. So I got this satisfaction of knowing that at least for a while that happened. Also that I hope that I will see that there's emotional catharsis for through the drama therapy, so that it's a vehicle for this, all this trauma, to somehow find some relief. If that happens, then I feel, you know, that we've accomplished some things together. Also, the idea of becoming empowered to take your message, and because sometimes what is created, sometimes the drama therapy or the writing is a reflection of the conditions they've been living under, which have been quite negative. And so my hope is that they'll be more empowered to take that and share that in public, share that with whomever, to educate them about the biases in the system, because having that vehicle of self-expression through the drama therapy is a critical thing. And I think knowing that they have a story to tell, and that for me, that would be what I would want to get out of it: the self-esteem development, the catharsis, escape, being able to express yourself to people in other settings. For me, it's not really what I want from the group. It's really what I hope they develop from it, and that there is an empowerment to see this as a vehicle for their own advocacy. So, because the story has to be told about conditions. I don't believe in just going in and doing programs without being really clear that there has to be a change in the system, and so, and hopefully what they are creating is a way that they can take that out. Like, for instance, the Fortune Society, that developed because of Fortune in Men's Eyes, the play, the discussions that were held with the audiences after people saw that play about prison conditions, and then people said, we have to do something, you know, and then Fortune Society grew out of the audiences from that play. So I think there's a lot of potential for having drama do more of that, educating the community about the problems. Change people's lives is a pretty big thing. I would just want to say a couple examples. And again, this was a group that I was working with for an extended period of time, which the women in a jail in New Jersey. I was actually there with a group called Offender Aid and Restoration. This was back in the 80s. And drama therapy was the primary approach that I was taking there. I actually asked the women in my group, you know, if you were going to do a video, what would you want the video to be of? And you're going to educate other people. Like, what do you want to say? So they came up with a video, which was taped in the prison itself, in the jail itself. And it was a story about how in a family, one sister recovers from drugs and goes into rehab, and the other does not, and how this tears up the family. And it was extremely powerful. It was taped in the jail. Anyone seeing that would not know that they were incarcerated except for the jail uniforms they were wearing. This tape then became an educational tool. They looked at themselves with such pride seeing what they had created, and they actually knew that others were going to learn from this. At one point when we were working on it, they were improvising, and the language was, you know, it was heavy stuff. And one of the guards came over and said she didn't realize it was improvisation, and she said, you have to stop talking like that. And the women said, we are putting together a film. If you'd like to stick around and listen to us, but they tried to explain, you know, come in, don't just judge us, because the guard just heard all this and wasn't realizing what they were doing, was coming up with she said, well, you're just promoting drugs. And they said, no, we're not. If you stick around, you'll see the end of the video is about, it is possible to change. So I was so proud that they had spoken up for themselves. I mean, they were extremely articulate, and then the guard kind of realized I need to not prejudge this. And another group, again, poetry movement. I work not so much with, I don't work with a given script, you know, so what's coming is like the singing, the improv, the poetry. There was a group of women from the jail who put together a showcase, which we were able to invite the community to, which was amazing, because come in and see it, because part of it is breaking down those negative images, right? So we had people from the local community coming, and they were in the audience. And at one point, what the women scheduled to do was to wear the gospel robes, choir robes, and they came in to the basement of the jail, singing Amazing Grace with the gospel robes on. I'm rarely speechless, but when I have a moment like that in my work, where, and I still get emotional talking about it, just validates everything. And when they asked me to come up, when the women asked me to come up and they want to thank me, I could not speak. And I said to them, I can't say anything but thank you, because I was just so moved by what they did. Now again, that pointed to my goal. Their dignity came across, their uniqueness, their self-worth. And that was what we have to say. Everyone is an individual. We cannot label, we cannot judge. We can't, and we have to know that the system is, I mean, there's racial bias. There's no doubt about it. With sentencing, money talks. You know, people are sitting in jail because they can't afford the bail. So all of these things are part of a systemic problem. And my goal is to help people see you have a voice. You know, so the name of that program was Breakthrough, because it was like break through the walls and the bars, but also break through and educate people about. And let's get some things changed here. So I know that's a long answer, and I only picked two, but I had to, I know you said pick one, but so. Let's say meet with the Department of Corrections and say, there is a need for drama therapy in prevention with adults and youth. We need to be part of the diversion programs coming from, like when people are as part of their assessment, when they're asked to talk to a counselor, when they're asked to go, well, drama therapy's there, like it's right in front and center with the judge. Okay, so it's an alternative. Community, I'd like to say drama therapy in treatment programs, group homes. So we know there's jails and prisons. So I wouldn't ignore that. I would say, but that's part of the continuum. You know, drama therapy is part of prevention, probation, parole, reentry, rehab. Then you have your jails and prisons are part of that. But I think if we only talk about jails and prisons, we're not raising awareness of the need to look at alternatives. I was looking at a book that I used for a course I mentioned to you, Cameron. I taught a course at Ithaca College, and instead of prisons I required the book. And there's research in that, and it's a very good book, where they interviewed wardens and said, can you tell me how many people who are incarcerated do you feel should be here based on, and the responses ranged from 50 to 9, they felt 50 to 90% of those who are incarcerated didn't need to be there. So some people felt 50%, some people felt 90. Either way, it was a large group. So they themselves were saying, and they were running the facilities, that if there had been other things like alcohol treatment, drug treatment, restitution, if there were other things, they wouldn't have had so many people in their jails and prisons. So I think, however, if we're looking at jails and prisons, I think if the drama therapy needs to be looked at as integral, and just like going to class or going to education, it's not privilege, it's a treatment. Because my experience is very often it was used as a privilege, as opposed to, no, it's part of the treatment. It's part of the, it can't be an option. Just like you wouldn't say you can't go to the doctor or you can't go to the therapist. You shouldn't say you can't go to the drama therapy group. And also that, like in the case of I don't know if you know the group, The Family, Pancho Camillo did prison theater work. All right, I worked with him and I performed with his troupe. They were composed of ex-inmates and community members. This would be part of my vision, that the vision that he had was the men and women that he worked with in the prison said, we want to keep in touch with you when we get out. So he formed a vehicle for that. And he created a theater group called The Family, which I performed with. And it was community people like myself and those who had been in prison. And what that did was help break down stereotypes, but it also gave work skills and reentry skills for those who wanted to continue the work. And it was phenomenal. I mean, and we performed in the prisons, in the community. We stuck around and they answered Q&A. And so it became a real educational tool too. So besides helping the men and women who had participate in the prisons, it helped them then feel that they could do something productive with it on the outside. So I think we also need to look at the disparity that, well, I say this everywhere, that people need to reflect the cultures they're working with. So I think very often we look at schools or prisons or jails and the cultural background of the staff do not reflect the people. I think that we don't see enough of those who are incarcerated, don't see enough of people from their own backgrounds in the field working. So I think we have to work in teams. We can't be, if we're doing something primarily with Latino youth, we can't be working without somebody who's bilingual. It's just, I don't think we're as conscious of that, but we need to be. We need to look at that, who's doing the work reflects the client, the people that are participating. So that's something I'd like to see in the future as well, would be more diversity in the drama therapy profession. So like the Fortune and Men's Eyes production inspired the Fortune Society, right? I think that drama therapists' work can, there could be a vehicle for this to become a basis of sharing with policymakers if there are things to break down those labels and stereotypes, so that there be more of a, whether it's filming it or documenting with writing or playwriting, but the stories are incredibly powerful, and I don't know how much of it is being understood or shared by decision makers and policy makers. Also that there be more ways for that to, either through public speaking, speakers bureaus, performances, where there is a vehicle for those who are in the drama therapy programs to translate that knowledge into community education. I think a lot of what is brought out in drama therapy is things that people normally would not talk about, and it's things that need to be heard because they're traumas and injustices. And so that it should be with the permission of the artists, the inmate artists, that if they say, yes, I do want this to be published, I do want this to be performed, I do want this to be filmed, I do want this part of a college class, I do want to be part of a speakers bureau, that be possible, that be offered to them. And I think it could end up being something that becomes part of presentations for community leaders, freeholders, legislators. I just think the power of theater is just an incredible tool. And so again, with not that the with permission, that the those who participated saying, would you be willing to be part of this community education process and be part of the film, be part of the, and I think my experience is that they wanted the story told. Even if it was anonymous, because it was too personal, they still wanted the story, even if their name wasn't on it. They wanted, I think theater should shake people up. So that's the best theater, I think. Stir people up, shake people up. Well, I think my philosophy, that what I think it's dehumanizing in the to live in cages, right? So the effect on the person's soul and psyche without an open door or expression can be a lifelong trauma. So if you're not, drama therapy is saying, we know you're a person with a soul, with uniqueness. You may be a number in here, but you're not a number to me. And it's vital for people to have a sense of their own self-worth. And because there's too much labeling, and if somebody keeps being treated a certain way, that breaks the person's spirit down. I actually had just an illustration. I did a program at a youth detention center, and I could tell from the atmosphere that staff had kind of written some of these kids off. We were doing a role play, and I asked one of the boys in the group if we were talking about bullying, and if did he want to play a peer counselor? Like, imagine you're in your high school. So I want to, we're taking you out of that setting, right? So you're in high school and somebody comes up to you with a problem. How are you going to help them? So you're the counselor. And his empathy, his compassion, his communication, playing the peer counselor was really moving. So afterwards I said, you played, in playing that counselor, you were playing a peer counselor in school. You brought up qualities from within you, right? I said, so you have empathy, you have compassion, you have these things. I hope you have it, because certainly in there you don't get much reinforcement that you are compassionate or you are empathetic. I said, but you just played a role with such incredible sensitivity. That's you, okay? Because you couldn't have played it that way if it wasn't with you. Now, I would hope that he would have left that group feeling a little like more energized, more or less demoralized by the setting, because he would be hopefully carrying that with him now. Like, yes, I am empathetic, I am compassionate, I am sensitive, because I showed that in how I played that role. So for me, it's a way to just promote self-worth in a system that really does not value that. And also sometimes address interpersonal conflicts, like we'll do role play. So you can help learn how to avoid these issues later if we kind of do role reversal and we look at conflicts that might be occurring out in the neighborhoods and or families or jobs. So almost like a rehearsal for life. So like, what would I do next time? Like what maybe I could, but playing a different character. They're not playing themselves, they're playing roles. But it's kind of rehearsing for the next time that comes up in life. Could I respond differently? And then I also think even like for job interviews, I mean, some of it's very practical, like role play, how are you going to come across in a job interview? But some of it's just emotional self-expression and promoting your value as an individual so that you don't walk away. I had a student in my Northern State Prison said he compared my class to an oasis because he wrote a poem about how the facility was a desert, you know, with emptiness, and that when they came in there, they knew that it was an oasis. That's what he felt. But beyond the oasis, now there's hopefully the drama therapy empowers, say, yes, I have self-worth. I'm going to now be part of the change and for alternatives. And again, my education came from that course that was taught by the Fortune Society. If they lit a fire in me because they had lived it, and it made me want to do something about it. So that's how I got involved, and it was from that spark from that class. And I have to say, David Rothenberg, who's part of the Fortune Society, he actually was part of a program we did here at Rutgers. And I went up to him and I said, I just want to let you know the impact you had on me back in those years. And he was very, very touched, because I guess a lot of people don't always have people come up to them and tell them how they made impact. But I was fortunate to this is actually a few months ago, to have a chance to thank him. I said, because of the Fortune Society, I got involved in this. So. Drama therapy is utilizing theater techniques. Some people use creative movement, role-playing, puppetry, using those creative techniques to express one's emotions, for emotional catharsis, for communication skills, and developing goal setting. So it's really hard to do that in a short, you know, it really is. But it's always with the belief in the value of the individual, I think, in it. Yeah. I think there's an advantage. I know there's an advantage of playing out one's own experiences through another role. I have seen that, and in my work now that I do with youth, is an incredible freeing experience. And therapists, I don't know, the clinicians, the social workers, I think are really amazed at what is coming out that they maybe could not tap in a verbal conversation. So we provide, I think we're like a gateway, I think, for the clinicians, social workers, therapists to say, wow, thank you. You know, we never knew this about this child or this adult. Now we kind of have some place to go, you know. I don't think it comes out in regular counseling. I really don't. Yeah. It's a big responsibility. It's a big responsibility, but it's an exciting one. It really is an exciting, there's so much potential and value.